welcome to our workforce podcast. Today we will discuss the preferences of our workforce. As we know, the war for talent is huge, and for that reason we have two specialists around the table, namely Sandra de Weert and Bart van den Bussen from our people and organization team. And I think we can start, so welcome.
Thank you.
As I said, it is of major importance to get a grip on the preferences of our workforce, our actual workforce and our future workforce. And before going into detail, why is it so important to grasp those preferences, Sandra?
Yeah, I can cover that question, Isabel, because in fact, we are facing turbulent times. The number of people that resigned post-COVID is really sky high, and at the same time, the number of vacancies is much higher than the number of people who are unemployed. So the combination of these two has led to a shortage, a tightness, I would say, on the labor market. It's something that we have never seen before, the Great Resignation. And talent that was settled in the same workplace for years is really breaking loose and is on the move. So that all results in the so-called shortages. Now, many companies are facing the problem when attracting and retaining employees. And I think that the competition and the war for talent is only expected to increase further. So it is important to take the preferences of the future employees into account. And when you think about it logically, the solution is very simple. Just give the right opportunities, the right benefits, the right salary, and new talent will automatically knock on the door. But the question, of course, is, Isabel, what type of rewarding elements are people really looking for? And I think that in order to answer that question, organizations should really critically look at their employee value proposition. So that's a bit the mission that companies face today.
Okay, and so and I think PwC, Bart, has a tool for that, to measure those preferences?
We have indeed an approach, solution. And thank you for having me in this podcast, Isabel. Actually, we did for the second year a workforce preference study, so market study in Belgium. Compared to the previous one, we actually broadened the scope. It was not only focusing on the younger generation, but we also want to measure, are there any difference depending, regardless, actually, the age of the persons in question. Indeed, as Sandra was said, the value proposition is indeed no longer a nice to have. Being successful is offering not offering more than competitors, because actually in today's circumstances, we see indeed that reward and the cost of packages is an important element. And therefore, I think it's important for employers to know what their employees actually want to have. And that by means of that preference study, which we of course can apply also at company level, we can provide insight what people actually want.
Okay, we will come back to that on the cost side later on. I think you mentioned first measuring. Measuring is knowing, and I always say knowing is growing. Maybe one of you both can elaborate on the main results of the survey?
Yes, because when we look at the top 10 wish list, I would say, we conclude that in fact employees focus on the daily work and on the social work environment.
Yes, and I think also compared to when the first study was actually conducted during the COVID and the first lockdowns, we now actually post those lockdowns also measured that some elements or preferences stayed. And one of those preferences is actually flexibility. Flexibility where and when I work. So we often say it's here to stay, flexibility, but actually the study also demonstrates that. And what we also saw was actually also an increase in terms of preference being able to work from home. There as well, the study provides some insight that confirms typically what we see in practice.
And also, that's important to note, employees are looking for work that is really interesting and challenging. So the job contact has a direct impact on the job satisfaction. People want to be triggered. They want to perform work that is rewarding and meaningful.
What we also see, that's more from a financial perspective, is that actually base pay, or you can call it cash, is actually on the third place. So that means that in terms of financial, that's the first financial rewarding element that's in the top 5. That's almost a hygiene factor, that people want to have certainty and prefer actually the cash in hand before other elements as such. And this is again also, I think, important in today's discussion about inflation increases and pay increases or not.
Yes, and also it should be said that people are also looking for a simple and nice working environment. So the colleagues, inspiring leaders, that is also very, very highly ranked in the top preferences. So I think that we can conclude that it is not about the cover, right? It's really about the content. People are less attracted, that's clear from the survey, by reputation or by employer branding. It does not mean that the activities or the values of the companies are as such not important, but they are not the primary attractor, I would say. And so we can also conclude that big employer campaigns should not actually the main focus in the recruitment strategy. Instead, the focus should be on all aspects surrounding the daily work, like flexibility, job content, base pay, and also the creation of a nice working environment.
Okay. Something to add, Bart, or can we move on?
That's well explained, Sam, so I fully agree.
If I understand it well, I hear homeworking, I hear flexibility, I hear reputation, and only one time I hear something about financials.
Mm-hmm.
Is it? Can I conclude that it's more about non-financial factors than financial factors for the moment? The preferences.
I would say not for the moment, but indeed, if you look at it from a total reward perspective, it's indeed that employees come, of course, in the end, work for more than cash alone. As said, it's an important factor. It's on the third place. But if you, as an employer, want to be an attractive employer, you should look further than the financial elements only. I think from that perspective, as said, the financial, certainly in this context, is also an important one. And actually the study, and that's also an interesting one, can also look at less preferred options, because we now focus actually on what's most preferred by the employees, which of course very good to know. But in these times when some companies need to think about their costs and do some cost cutting, we mainly see that of course people focus actually on the cash and the base pay elements. In this context, and there I think our insights could offer valuable insights if we could see indeed or determine for your specific company which elements are less preferred. If you want to do a saving, that it less hurts your employees, you still put employees first, but still, of course, we are in an economic context that you can, of course, make some savings for some companies to survive. So I think that's a win-win, and put some, I would say, a different element into the debate that we see today in the market.
And Bart, you were referring to the economic context, and there we also see that people have a clear preference now for immediate cash. So they have to pay bills, etc. So the uncertain elements, which we can find back in a bonus or variable pay, are clearly less appreciated.
Correct.
It's also a tendency that we see in the study.
Okay, it's all about having the cash in the hand, I would say, and less uncertain financial things. Okay.
And that's of course from an employee perspective, because also, of course, from an employer perspective, you still have, of course, the pay for performance. But so there you see certainly two elements in terms of preference. It's clear an employee wants to have certainty, while of course the performance element still is of course important from an employer perspective.
Thank you. Very interesting to see how this study can help in terms of a solution for different kind of objective for a company. So on the one hand, you have the workforce that you have to motivate and to find and to look for the right population, the right employees. And the other side, you have of course the costs. So those two combined is very interesting to see with this study. Any other points to add that you say, okay, this is very important, or highlights?
Perhaps one element, because where we also want to focus is if you want to do some cost cutting, that you could indeed look at the less preferred elements, but also the link to retention. If we're talking about value proposition, is also about retention, and that's also perhaps a learning from the previous crisis, still not that far away, but where we see that where people were laid off or have lost people, organizations that have lost people, still have now difficulties to rehire them. And also in that perspective, I think everything around value proposition and measuring what people really want is very important. So it's not only about the costs, but as well the retention is also an important one.
Okay, thank you. Sandra, you want to add something, a last point or something where we can say, okay, PwC?
I think a lesson to learn or something to take away is that organizing and conducting a preference study is an ideal way to close the gap between, on the one hand, the budget and the agenda of the company, and on the other hand, the expectations of the employee. So at PwC, we use True Choice, which is a solution to help organizations to design an employee value proposition that is in line with company's value and culture, and that at the same time helps the clients to attract and retain the right talent. Moreover, as Bart explained, we can ensure that this is done within the given budget. So I think, Isabel, that we can say that if we manage to do that, we created a win-win for both, for organizations and for the workforce. Okay. That's a bit the message, I think, of today.
Okay, anything to add, Bart?
I couldn't agree more, Isabel.
Okay, thank you very much, and looking forward to meeting you for our next one.
Thank you, Isabel.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thanks.
Bye.